A push to get Mitt Romney to run for president. Could robots and artificial intelligence be more dangerous than nukes? Plus, the nation's youngest mayor is out of a job. All these stories and more coming up on The Rundown.
All right, stand by. 10 seconds.
Ready, camera,
Show.
talent. Ready, camera,
Record.
3, 2, 1.
Record.
Thanks so much for joining us. This is The Rundown, where we take a look at some of the big stories making headlines. I'm your host, John Phillips. Joining us from Washington, D.C. is PJTV contributor Michelle Fields. And here in studio, we're joined by stand-up comic Mr. Steven Cruiser. Now it's time to go to the top of The Rundown. And Cruiser, you're up first.
At the top of my rundown, a U.S. program in Cuba is under fire for secretly using an HIV prevention workshop to promote a political agenda. The Obama administration has defended its use of the HIV prevention workshop for its Cuban democracy promotion efforts, saying it was not a front for political purposes. A dozen young people from Latin America were recruited to basically spy on Cuba and gather opponents to Cuba's Castro government. Recruits received about 30 minutes of training on how to evade Cuban intelligence. Here's more.
They had hired kind of subcontracted a company called Creative Associates International to do this work, and what essentially they were doing is they took about couple dozen 20-somethings from Venezuela, Costa Rica, and other Latin American countries, and sent them to Cuba, where they posed as tourists, visited like college campuses, and then a few of them actually created like an HIV prevention workshop. But this was all under the cover of doing that work or doing these things, but it was all under the cover to kind of recruit, catalog, and find like who in the Cuban youth would be dissident to the Castro, government, the Castro-led government down there, and really kind of be able to report back and kind of make a database almost of potential dissidents that would be on our side in enacting change in Cuba.
John, okay, we don't use the military there because of one, history, and two, the fact that if we use the military properly to handle Cuba, we look like bullies. Our covert efforts for decades have always just gone completely awry. It's horrible. Why are we still bothering with Cuba at this point? Shouldn't we just let them be Cuba and just ignore them until the Castros die?
Well, I don't know. I'm a big fan of the exploding cigars, personally. But here's the issue with Cuba, and we learned this during the Cold War. Cuba itself is not a threat to us. But Cuba, to use the, medical terminology that they're using to try to get these dissidents all riled up, Cuba is a host cell. And they're waiting for a virus to come in and take hold of the host cell. And it was the Russians during the Cold War, but it's just not limited to the Russians. Just think about what could happen if you're Al-Qaeda or you're some sort of enterprising terrorist network and you're looking for a way to hit the United States, but it's too difficult to do it from within the borders. Going to a place like Cuba, where you've got the Castro brothers still running the country, and you've got a government that's openly hostile to the United States, could be a way to really sucker punch us or do something that we wouldn't necessarily have our eye on outside of our purview. So I don't know. I mean, I think it would be great for Cuba to lose the Castros, to go back to being a thriving democracy, or go to being a thriving democracy. So if they're trying to take out the Castro brothers, I have no problem with that.
Michelle, as John alluded to, one of the problems with Cuba has always been, who they're allied with, and Russia was the big problem forever. Do you think maybe the administration has known all along that Russia was about to become a big problem again, and that's the reason that they decided to do something in Cuba right now?
Well, I don't know. Look, I have a problem with this story for two reasons. First off, this administration made it seem as though they were going to try to work with Cuba, that there was going to be this new relationship that he was going to usher in when he became president. Well, that didn't happen. So to me, I see a very an incoherent foreign policy in terms of relationships with Cuba, with Russia, with everyone, it seems like. And then the second problem with this is that we basically just grabbed these kids, gave them no formal training really, and just threw them in there and put them in a very vulnerable situation without them being properly prepped. So it seems like, yeah, we are trying to do something about Cuba. We realize that they're a threat, but we're not doing it the right way. It's not effective to just get a bunch of people and give them 30 minutes of training and send them to Cuba. That's not going to accomplish anything. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, trying to turn a bunch of kids into spies is kind of a dicey business right there. But
People do it during divorces all the time.
it's thankfully not in mine. But I'm a big fan of, if they're going to call us imperialist overlords all the time, if we're going to get that rap that we're just empire builders, annex the frickin' thing. Use the military. Take Cuba. I'm done with this.
All right.
My entire lifetime we've been dealing with this Cuban
And
stuff.
put big casinos on the beach so Cruiser can go there and play blackjack.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, time to move to the top of my rundown, where a push to get former Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney to make another run for office is taking hold. The group Draft Mitt wants Romney to run for president in 2016, but Romney isn't having it. His camp is not supporting the push, and none of them asked for this to happen. The website draftmitt.org was created by Utah Republican State Chairman James Evans. Evans admitted that the site did not have Romney's blessing. Romney has said he's not going to run again. And Cruiser, this could be a couple of different things at play here. But I think first and foremost, outside of the love for Mitt and the state of Utah and from this particular chairman, it's buyer's remorse for re-electing President Obama, where people are looking at President Obama saying, you know what, we screwed up last time.
I think I've actually seen a couple of independents go on record as saying, okay, I'm one of the people who would think of voting for Romney for the first time in this election now. So there's some of that going on. All I look at, though, the camps, we're so cynical in this modern era. Whenever a candidate says, no, I'm not running, we usually take that to mean, oh, yeah.
Well, they're usually lying.
Yeah. But his press appearances have been up lately. He's speaking out more in op-eds. He's been on TV a lot more, and that's all I've been looking at. How they're upping their profile in the media, and generally that means they're at least testing the waters. He may not have made a decision yet, but he's at least testing the waters.
You know, Michelle, if you look at the way the Democrats nominate people to run for president, they are not averse to going to some small state and taking some nobody candidate that we've never heard of before and giving them the nomination. They did it with Jimmy Carter, they did it with Bill Clinton, they did it with Barack Obama. And if you're the person who's next in line, sometimes that can be a strategic disadvantage for them. The Republicans are the exact opposite. We like name brands. We nominate people named Nixon. We nominate people named Bush. We nominate people named Dole. If we're going to go for a name brand candidate next time, there's really two people that jump out. It's Mitt Romney, who we've nominated before, and it's Jeb Bush from Florida. Of those two, is Romney your preference?
He's the lesser of two evils. But I don't like Mitt Romney. I don't think that he was ever a very good candidate. But do I think that he would have done a better job than what Obama's doing right now? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that he should be the candidate for 2016. There's a reason why he lost. He never connected to the voters. He may be a great person with great ideas, but he's not a good candidate. And in terms of elections, you got to win. And Mitt Romney has proven that he cannot win. Now, is he going to run for 2016? I do think it's suspicious that suddenly he's doing all of this media tours and interviews and whatnot. But I think what it boils down to is whether Ann Romney, his wife, is going to want to do it again. I think she's the one who's really going to make the decision here. I bet he wants to do it, but Ann Romney didn't want to do it last time, and I can't imagine that she wants to do it again. So I think it's going to be convincing her.
And let's not forget, it's not just that he ran last time. Last time he ran and he won the nomination. He ran in 2008, the time before that, and lost in the primary. So this would be the third chance that he would have at winning the presidency.
Which, in keeping with, as you said, is the Republican way of doing things, would mean he's a lock if he does it again.
I think so.
Yeah, but unless Jeb jumps in.
All right, get that eye roll from Cruiser.
God.
You got to cut.
You got
cut
get
to
my
the
eye
camera.
roll with that
All right.
sigh of disgust that Michelle had when you first introed the
All right,
story.
let's go ahead.
Pair those up in
recreate it,
post-production.
Cruiser. There we go.
Like that.
My day is now complete. Michelle, what do you have for us?
At the top of my rundown, the founder of Tesla and SpaceX, Elon Musk, who I had the opportunity to interview last year with PJ Media, he's come out and he's worried about artificial intelligence. The billionaire is concerned that artificial intelligence could be smarter than humans with catastrophic results. They could be programmed to kill, go haywire, or do anything it can to achieve its final goal. Musk tweeted out this week, quote, "Worth reading Superintelligence by Bostrom. We need to be super careful with artificial intelligence, potentially more deadly than nukes. In a second tweet, Musk said, "Hope we're not just the biological bootloader for superintelligence." Unfortunately, that is increasingly probable. So he's concerned that it can be, the artificial intelligence could be worse than nukes. Cruiser, what do you think? You've always got your tinfoil hat on. I feel like you probably agree with Elon, no?
As a big sci-fi fan, this has been fodder for sci-fi stories for a long time, and yes, they've been scaring us with this for a long time, and I do believe. I mean, if you look at 2001: A Space Odyssey, Frank Herbert's White Plague, I think it's always about our AI run amok, and I do believe the potential is there. If it's a more efficient way of processing thoughts and you strip out the human emotion, at some point they're going to evolve and realize that we're ridiculous, and then it's Planet of the Apes but with robots.
It could happen, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I look at a Keurig machine that makes coffee, and I'm like a caveman looking at a fax machine. So I don't understand technology. I don't know where it's going, but I know it's going in places that I can't comprehend. I was just talking to some friends who work in the airline industry. In fact, I had John Nance, who was the ABC News aviation analyst, on. And he said, we're not far away from creating planes that can fly themselves, where you don't need pilots and co-pilots or any of that. And we have, what do you call it, where the plane flies itself in the middle of the flight.
Autopilot?
Autopilot, yes. You have autopilot for the middle of the flight, but they now have autopilot that can take off and land. In fact, they do that when there's thick fog. When they're landing, they just type in all the coordinates and the plane lands itself. Pilots don't do it.
Well, if we can get rid of drunk, tired pilots, I'm okay with that. And I don't think it was White Plague from Frank Herbert, so those of you who are sci-fi fans, don't jump all over me. That just popped in, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't the book, but you know which one I'm talking about, because you know how you sci-fi people are.
All right. Now it's time to get to your sweet spot. This is where we take a look at some of the lighter and softer stories making news. And I'll go first. Minnesota's youngest mayor has lost his bid for re-election. Bobby Tufts, oh, there he is wearing his hat, lost his bid to remain mayor of Dorset, Minnesota. The town has a population of just 25. He was elected, get this will put a lot of California elections to shame, when he was just 3 years old. He's now 5 and out of the mayor's office. The new mayor is 16-year-old Eric Mueller. The election is decided by picking a name out of a hat. And that's better than letting the unions decide, which is what we do in California.
Lo, these many years after the drafting of the Constitution, I now think may be the most electorally brilliant thing I've ever heard.
Would you be his campaign co-chair, Michelle?
I absolutely would. Absolutely.
All right, Michelle, what do you have for us?
Okay, in the sweet spot, Princeton Review's annual list of the top party schools in the nation is out. 379 colleges were surveyed, and America's top party school for 2015 is Syracuse University. University officials were not happy with the private university showing, say they do not aspire to be a party school. The university does have a big sports scene, which likely helped the party mood. Rounding out the top 5 party schools, the University of Iowa came in 2nd, UC Santa Barbara in 3rd. West Virginia University took 4th spot, and the 5th spot belonged to the University of Illinois. So if you guys had kids and they wanted to go to Syracuse, would you send them there?
Why not? They want to go to upstate New York. Have at it.
I've been doing gigs there for 20-something years, and trust me, yeah, they're party people there. They're snowed in 10 months of the year. There's nothing else to do but drink.
Yeah, there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
They need the peppermint schnapps to warm up. All right, Cruiser.
In my sweet spot, once again, Prius drivers are a little off. And guess what, kids? This one isn't from Florida. An upstate New York woman was driving a Prius and crashed it into a fire station. 2 fire trucks were damaged. When police arrived, they found the woman, Sarah Espinoza, in the car with a python wrapped around her neck. She apparently stole the python earlier from a Petco, and of course, alcohol was involved. Police arrested her for drunk driving, drug possession, larceny, among other charges. Fortunately, no firefighters were hurt. That's why we're doing this story. The snake was returned back to the store, but if you're going to lose it big. Get the python, steal the python, drive your car through a wall.
Well, here's the bigger question, though. Were there any Obama-Biden bumper stickers injured in the process of this?
I'll put money on that and a coexist.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Do you agree with Elon Musk's comments that artificial intelligence could be more dangerous than nukes? What about Mitt Romney? Would you like to see him run for president again for a third time in 2016? We want to know what you think, so leave your comments in the comments section below. I'm John Phillips for Stephen Cruiser joining me here in Los Angeles and Michelle Fields in the nation's capital. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.